Firstly, I'd like to I think this idea has been in the works for a while. I just stepped out of the room, but definitely people have been working on this for a while. I think I was asked to do some other event way back in the summer. So I haven't been preparing all the way since the summer, and I don't go overtime, so you don't have to worry about it. I'm not usually, I guess I've given some shiurim to women, but usually I spend my days giving shiur to Beis Medrash Bachrim, I guess older high school Bachrim. So if I sound like a Beis Medrash Rebbe or sound like your teenage son, you should understand why. It comes with the territory. I'm also intimidated, though she told me she's going to leave soon. So it's always a madrega talking in front of your wife. Puts an added pressure on my daughter. So today's theme, in general, is a Women's Day of Learning and talking about what we could do. I guess we're here in yeshiva as parents, as mothers, what could we do better to help our children? So I specifically chose a topic entitled The Mother's Encouragement, a Child's Strength. Because I do think there's a lot that a mother could do to help her child. You know, I've seen many children over the years, and sometimes I could tell what the connection is, the child and his parents, and the strength that a child has, or sometimes the weakness, you could sometimes attribute to the relationship that he has vis-a-vis his parents, and all that a parent, the mother, has invested in the child in the years coming up to this point. You know, Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei, "Shema b'ni musar avicha, v'al titesh Torah simecha." A child should listen to the musar, literally, I guess, the rebuke of his father, v'al titesh Torah simecha, but don't push away the Torah of a mother. And all the Mefarshim seem to hit on the fact that Shlomo Melech realized there's a difference between a father and a mother. A mother is irreplaceable. There's a certain aspect that a mother has that she gives over to the child. The father could stand on his head from today until tomorrow. The Rabbeim could try to do whatever Talmud. But Torah Simecha, there's a special thing Shlomo Melech realized that a mother puts into a child which can't be replaced, can't be duplicated. The special, I call it the mother's touch, which plays a role in the development of that child. And it's important here, as women, as mothers, to know what that aspect is, how we could touch our children with that, and the impact of it. Now, you know, in the world, a lot of times there are catchphrases, or buzzwords, which I know one of my jobs in yeshiva, I have to recruit for the Beis Medrash. You know, I have to build the Beis Medrash, get people to come to my yeshiva, to our yeshiva, and a lot of times the phrase is, yeah, you have a yeshiva that's, you know, small Rebbe-Talmud relationship and serious learning, like catchphrases. You know, every place sounds the same, but really there are differences. You know, I also deal with older boys in shidduchim. You look at a resume. Every girl is a big balas chesed. Every girl did wonderful things. You know, on the resume, a lot of people look the same. How do you distinguish differences between people? This past week's parsha, the Torah talks about Miriam, Moshe Rabbeinu's sister, and Yocheved, Moshe Rabbeinu's mother, that previous to his birth, they had a side job. They were the midwives who helped out the Mitzrayim. And the Torah refers to them as Shifra and Pua. It's interesting, why did they pick those names, Shifra and Pua, to describe Miriam and Yocheved? So Rashi over there says that Shifra comes from the Lashon, the Shafoy, that she made beautiful child. cleaned the child up after birth, and made sure that the child looked good. And pua comes from the language. I think we all still speak it, no matter if we speak English, Spanish, French, doesn't matter. You go poo-poo to a child. Pua. That's where it comes from. So I saw Yerucham Levovitz, the Mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva, is bothered by a question. That's the big name, the nickname you give to Miriam and Yocheved who risk their lives to help out the Jewish children? Like, okay, that they poo-pooed the child, they cleaned up the child. Every woman, any mother would do that. Why is it so special, so unique, that you call them Shifra and Pua? Everyone does that. Great question. But I think it's even more insightful as answer. Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz answers that Shifra and Pua, or Miriam and Yocheved, stood out. This was their whole life, their whole being. They totally cared for this child with every fiber of their being. They might have done the same actions that another person would do. They cleaned up the child. They said, "Oi, you got a boo-boo, poo-poo," whatever they did. But they did that with all their heart. When you do something with all your heart, when it's your main prerogative in the day, when it's what you wake up for in the morning, it comes across differently. You may not be able to put on a piece of paper and describe what you're doing, but in the heart of a child, it has an impact. The child picks up on it. Whether you're giving your child your full attention or your partial attention. Kids realize those things, and they pick up on it. Miriam and Yocheved were two individuals who there was no question about it. Their total focus, their total life was to take care of these children, and that's why the Torah praises them. They were Shifra and Pua. So this power that women have to touch their children, impact their children, there's different levels. I'm sure everybody in this room is a wonderful mother, but I assume we take off our time and we come to wonderful days like this, so, rub off on fathers too. We should become a better father, a better mother, and we do more. And every little madrega, every little vista that we could become better in is a huge improvement. It does something, it somehow touches, affects our children. I was thinking about this idea that a mother's encouragement, mother's warmth. So one story in Chazal, which I think depicts that, is Yaakov had this as a child, young adolescent we'll call him, had this task that his mother put on him that he has to go somehow and steal these brachos from his father Yitzchak, which is a very tough thing to do. Yaakov was the ish emes, everything he did was with truth, and here the situation called for that he has to sort of bend the rules and act in a way that this situation is the right thing to do, but he felt uncomfortable. He was pulling the wall, or literally the wool, over his father's eyes. So, okay, he realizes if he doesn't do this well, and Yitzchak, his father, gets upset at him, he could curse him, and that could be the end of him. He was quite nervous. So the Ramban writes that Rivka went and walked Yaakov, escorted him, up to the doorway till he had to go into Yitzchak's room and play the ruse, play this trick. And I remember my Rosh Yeshiva, Henach Leibowitz, pointed out that, why did Rivka do that? For emotional support. Even someone who's taking upon himself, like Yaakov, a pretty major factor, getting the brachos for Klal Yisrael was a big deal. But when he's going up to the door to have the emotional support of his mother there, that played a big difference in Yaakov's life. And that gave him the strength to go through it and do it. You think of it, if you ever have a child that needs to go into surgery, as a mother, you're going to stick there up until the nurse kicks you out, up until that last door, which they tell you can't go through. Because, okay, we partially do it for ourselves, but that also has an important impact on a child. The child is showing, look, I think the words that Rivka told Yaakov was, I could only come up to here. Look, I did absolutely everything for you. I prepared you for this moment. I walked you up to here. And years ago, I heard a pretty cool story about this. Not sure here if everyone is familiar. This yeshiva, I guess, is a branch of what they call the Chavetz Chaim yeshivas. Chavetz Chaim yeshivas was started in 1933 by someone named Rabbi David Leibowitz. It was really one of the first yeshivas in America. David Leibowitz was a nephew of the Chavetz Chaim. That's why the yeshiva has that name. And he was a great student of the Alter Slobodka and Naftali Trupp and Radin and Slobodka, all the great European yeshivas. He started yeshiva in 33. Or Rahman Son at 52. That means at the age of 52, in 1941, he passed away from a heart attack. And at the Levaya, that was known, his young son, Reb Henoch Leibowitz, was 24 years old when his father passed away. Now, he wasn't just a regular 24-year-old. He already was in his father's base medrash share at the age of 12. It's pretty good. I only usually have 12-year-olds in my share. At 12 years old, he already was in his father's share. Okay, so it's 12 years he was already learning a base medrash. There's no slouch. He was an Eloi, he was brilliant. At the funeral, Reb Aaron Kotler was the one who announced that young Reb Henoch would assume his father's role and become Rosh Yeshiva of the yeshiva. So he was 24 years old, taking over at that time one of the 3 yeshivas in America, a few yeshivas in America. It's quite a task. On top of that, he wasn't in great health. A couple years before, he was quite sick, deathly ill. And Baruch Hashem, he rebounded from that, but he was out of yeshiva for a year. He was a frail, weak, obviously gifted, brilliant kid. He was giving shiur to people who were basically his age. And there was somewhat of, people a little unsure what's going to be about this young Rosh Yeshiva giving shiur, 24 years old. I know there's at least one person in this room who've heard some of these stories before. Your father wasn't there. I heard this story from Rabbi Yochanan Chait. That's Rabbi Sion Chait, the founder of this yeshiva, his father. He was in the room. He was in the shiur. He told me the yeshiva looked so nervous. His own mother brought him into the shiur room to give shiur. Can you imagine that scene? 24 years old, big task. His mother walked him up to the door. Okay, he has to give shiur. She stayed in the side room. After he was finished, she came in. I think she did this for a while. And after the shiur, they would ask him questions. And she thought it was getting a little too tight. The boys were being too rough with him. She would come in to take care of her boy. But obviously, it's a nachas. It's a pride for her to take her son, who became the Rosh Yeshiva, take over her husband's position. But it's also something for him. He needed that strength. When he saw the words of the Ramban years later, he realized what Rivka did for her son Yaakov. That's what, gosh, talk to women. It's not easy. That strength she wanted to give to him. And she did the same thing. So I really think this is an aspect. Husbands can't do this. Guys can't do it. Rebbeim try, but it's not the same. But whatever a mother could give over strength to a child, any degree of encouragement a mother gives over to a child, that translates in the child as strength. He becomes a stronger person because he knows he has his mother behind him. Okay, at a certain age, I already have some kids. Like, okay, mom, leave me alone. Right? At a certain age, they try to push you away. Well, let me tell you something. I was a kid too. Right? That's so superficial. You push the kid away, you push the mother away. I'm just embarrassed because you don't want your friends to see your mother walking you in there. But emotionally, you need that strength. And when you look at the world today, there are so many challenges, so many nisyonos. Kids struggle with the internet, kids struggle with peer pressure, kids struggle, all the vices in the world today, all the things available, like it's scary, right? They want to legalize this and that, and the best of yeshivas, you could find tremendous amount of smoking, drinking, every vice available you could find. Nothing sacred, nothing safe. How's your kid going to succeed in a world which, everything is against him? And you see situations, you can come from wonderful families. Lots of kids that come from wonderful families who don't turn out exactly the way their parents planned. But what a child for sure needs is his mother's encouragement, his mother's support. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. A child has to see his mother's support. And I want to go through, I think, 4 different areas, 4 dimensions of that. I give share to base matters guys, so you always have to give out handouts and marmakomos. I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't going to give out Rabbi Egers and Ksoses to everybody here. Not sure you've seen those before. So I stuck to things written in English. One author that I have copyrights on. So we have that. So the first dimension is to build in a home an encouraging environment. And just off the top of my head, I found 4 topics that you find within Chazal in the early years of a child's development. 4 aspects that a parent could do that will encourage a child. The first begins with the name, right? You have a child, probably one of the first decisions you have to have with that child, sometimes people make that decision beforehand. Okay, but somewhere along the line, you're making a decision what to name the child. I just gave a share to community members, men, about the topic of names this week. It's Parsha Shemos. What you name a child has an impact on him. We read a couple of weeks ago, Hamal Chagol Asim Korah, Ivarach Hasnarim, Karv Hem Shmi, Shem Avos Avram Yitzchak Viguro B'Karv Aretz. And the Ramban writes over there that ideally, a person should name a child Karv Hem Shmi V'Shem Avosai. Have some connection to our forefathers. It could go all the way back to our forefathers, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It could also go back to our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, whoever we're naming after. But for a child to begin life with an identification of who you are, connects with earlier generations. That's a big deal. Now, okay, I'm not getting into the halakhic aspect. Should a person give his child also a secular name, a non-Jewish name? Okay? Right? There might be good reason for that. You ever want to flee the country? A passport has a good name on it. That's something to that, okay? You want to give your kid a secular name, a non-Jewish name, also fine. But he should have some Jewish name that he associates himself with. I remember when I went to yeshiva, some of my friends, grew up all American kids, all had English names. And some of my Rebbeim were strong. In the classroom, they only referred to the child with the Hebrew name. That's an identity. The child having identity. You're Avram. Okay? You could also be called Albert. You're Sarah. Okay? You could also have an English name, Stacy. But have some identification with the name. The name means something. I quoted in that share the other day. My mother would always tell me over. She read a column years ago from Rebbetzin Esther Youngreis, famous Kier figure. And she wrote a column that talked about, hey, If you want your child to aspire to be Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, call him Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. If you want to aspire to be Michael Jordan, call him Michael. Call him LeBron. But you want what your child to be. You wear your name on your sleeve. You wear your name on your cap, who you are. So that's one aspect we find in Chazal. It's an interesting halacha. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, I think, made this famous. This halacha that ideally a Jewish child should only be nursed from a Jewish mother. And the source of that, the Gra says, is by Moshe Rabbeinu. Because Moshe Rabbeinu orchestrated, it worked out that it shouldn't be with the Mitzri, it should be with the Jewish, and end up being his mother, Yocheved. And Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky asked, Moshe Rabbeinu is a source for this halacha? The reason why by Moshe Rabbeinu he couldn't nurse from a Mitzri, because the same mouth that's going to nurse, they're going to speak to Klal Yisrael, give over the Torah, he should be the one whose nurses from a Mitzri? What does that have to do with our kids? Says Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, this is the bar that we have to set for our children. We raise our children in what we call the Lachachila world, in the most opportune world. We raise our children in a way that we want to give him all the possibilities he could aspire to be, use his talents that Hashem gave him, and he could be a tzaddik like Moshe Rabbeinu. He's not going to go up there in Har Sinai and get the Torah like him. He's not going to achieve 49 levels of Chachma like him. That, maybe not. But he could utilize his strength to the fullest and become a great person. And that's an idea, that's an important foundation when we raise our children. We raise our children with ideals for greatness. There's another halacha. It's interesting. It says by Moshe Rabbeinu that the teva that his sister put him in was specifically a teva. It didn't have gefes, it didn't have this tar on the spot near where he would be staying. It was more on the outside. And the reason for it, he shouldn't smell that bad smell. The lashon Rashi used in describing this, it wouldn't be fit for that tzaddik. That tzaddik? He was just born. Now granted, he was born with light, it lit up the whole house, Chazal say, fine. But he wasn't yet a tzaddik, didn't yet reach anything based on his own bechira, his own free will. But that's the way you raise him. You raise your kid as your little tzaddikel. Is the kid going to do things wrong? Is he going to fight with his sisters? Sure is. His brothers? Sure, her brothers. But part of your mind has to have a picture of what my kid could be, and to give him every possible opportunity to reach that greatness. Chazal say the first thing when a child begins to speak, you should teach them Torah Tzivalon Moshe. Why? What's the big deal? You tell me he's going to remember the first words he said? I don't remember the first words I said. I don't know. It's probably more for you than for the child. The first words that come out of his mouth, you should, from the beginning, you should aspire to teach your son Torah. We do all the things, for the development of a child. Chas v'shalom, you go to the doctor and something wrong. Okay, you walk in here, you see there's lots of therapies going on. Right? We do everything we can to take care of a child. But at the same time, we have to do everything we can to fulfill his ruchnius, that the child should be able to learn Torah. First words he says, Torah Tzivalon Moshe. I came across this letter from Rabbi Chaim Brisker. It was quite interesting, where he says, many parents, they feel it's sufficient. That's child, goes to yeshiva. He's able, when they're younger, they're able to say over the parsha. Okay, what about later? I deal with boys, I tell them a vort on the parsha too, but they're spending most of the days learning Gemara, Shulchan Aruch, Rishonim, Achronim. How about proficiency in Gemara? Let's start with that. That has to be, Rabbi Chaim Brisker writes, like a basic step. a child has to be able to be proficient, not just, okay, he knows about the Yom Tovim, he knows Chumash. A child has to be proficient in Gemara. Now, I realize the audience I'm talking to. I'll get to that a little bit later. Nobody here ever learned Gemara. It's one of the most challenging things you'll ever see. It's rigorous, it's very tough. And there are many kids that they try and they're not as successful. It doesn't mean you give up. You persist, you try. I have kids by me in Beis Medrash who situations never really learned Gemara before. But they persist and they try and they break through. They're able to do it. Not only reserved for Iluyim, for brilliant kids, anybody could do it. You know, in the world today, Baruch Hashem, they have art school Gemaras, which people could read, Hebrew and English. That's a wonderful first step. But the world doesn't end with art school. Art school's first getting to Tosfos. There's so much. Whatever we could do to inspire our children in Torah, to encourage an environment of Torah, that's amazing. I came across an interesting story. This story was said over by Chaskol Sarna, who's a Rashiva of the Chevron Yeshiva in Yerushalayim, B'Shem Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, who's the father of the Muslim movement. So Chaskol Sarna used current Israeli mashals to describe it, but really Rabbi Yisrael's mashal dated back to Europe. Well, let's say you're in Israel, you're in Yerushalayim. You want to take a bus to Bnei Brak, so it means you're going north. Okay, the guy goes to the bus stop. You know what goes on over there in Israel, these bus stops, pushing and shoving, so many people, it's so overwhelming. This past summer I was in Eretz Yisrael. I did pretty well in the buses, but one time I went the wrong way, got on the wrong side of the bus. My problem, I decided to ask, a 5-year-old Israeli kid because they know everything. And my Hebrew was pretty decent. I thought I got the right direction, but I asked the wrong kid, or he got the kick of sending an American the wrong way. Next thing I knew, I was in the bus depot. I was in Sanhedrin Rechevet. I ended up, I don't know where, with a bunch of Arabs, like, on a break over there. Yeah, it wasn't fun. Anyway, so the guy, he wants to go to Bnei Brak. Fortunately, gets on the wrong bus. All of a sudden, he goes all the way south. He's in the Negev. Okay, he realized a mistake. Now he's going to go on the bus to Bnei Brak. At which point in time was he closer to his destination? When he's standing in Yerushalayim to take a bus to Bnei Brak? Or right now in the Negev? It's right now in the Negev. Beforehand, he might have been geographically closer to Bnei Brak. But if you're going in the wrong direction, then you're far away. You could be far away, but if you're pointed in the right direction, you'll get there. That's the advice that we have to give over to our kids. The encouragement to make an environment. It's a long path to become a Ben Torah, to become somebody who has midos, Yirah Shamayim, a frum Jew who will daven every day, 3 times a day, perform mitzvahs properly. It's a long path to do that for a lifetime. But we should be directing our kids in the right path. It doesn't matter how far away we are, but it matters the direction that we're going in. So that is what I call the first dimension, setting up this environment where it's an encouraging environment for our children to grow in Yiddishkeit. The second one I entitled, Encouraging Growth Through Understanding, through knowledge. I'll begin this part with a question. Recently hit me. Well, like I said, to talk about yeshivas. What's the purpose of a yeshiva? I talk to many people. Many people have different ideas what a yeshiva is. Is the main purpose of a yeshiva, and really, I'm not just talking about yeshiva, I'm talking about a home environment too, but I'll use yeshiva as a mashal. Is the purpose of a yeshiva this protective environment, this greenhouse, which will shield my kid from all the negative influences around him, and provide him with just positive influence? Is that the purpose of a yeshiva? Or is the second perspective, is the main purpose of a yeshiva. Yeah, yeshiva is supposed to do that. That's part of it. But it's not the goal of the yeshiva. The goal of the yeshiva is to provide an environment for growth, an environment for understanding, for learning, for changing. Which is the description of yeshiva. So I see people shaking their heads one way or the other. It's not so simple. In discussions with many people, people choose yeshiva. There are many people who choose yeshiva just for point A. Just give me an environment which I think will be safe, free from any influences, and that's the definitive factor in my choice of a yeshiva. However, I think the correct answer is the second one. The purpose of a yeshiva, the main purpose is growth. And therefore, when you're weighing different things, you have to weigh the aspect of the growth of learning, the growth through learning that my child's going to have. You can't just be fixated on who the friends, what's the environment, what's going to be. You have to take something else into account. He's not just putting him in the greenhouse. You're giving him Torah, which Torah itself expands a person's mind, and he becomes a different person, and he grows. And I was happy to find that really, I believe this discussion was made years ago between the Alter of Slobodka and one of his star Talmidim, who ended up being his son-in-law, Isaac Sher. They were saying, how do you protect somebody from negative influences? This might sound like politics of today, but Rabbi Isaac Sher says you build a wall. Right? How do you prevent things you don't want coming in? You build a wall. Okay, what type of wall? We'll talk about it. You build a wall. The Alter of Slobodka said to his Talmud, no. If I want to protect something, I'll build a garden around it. Really? What? We talking about the same thing? How are you going to protect somebody without a wall just by building a garden? Just put some nice flowers around, right? Trump won't buy this one, right? You're going to put at the border, like the border between us and Mexico, we'll just have beautiful, beautiful flowers, right? Tulips from Holland, this. Beautiful border. So no one's going to come across, right? That sounds silly. The Alter Slobodka said, I'll tell you why that's a great idea. Because you build a wall, all that you're doing is shutting the person off from the other side. Are you teaching them why to choose not to go to the other side? Are you empowering him with the strength to know why this is better? But if you teach somebody, you show them why I shouldn't trample over that. Look at these beautiful flowers. See the beauty in it. See what you're giving up by getting to the other side. If you see the beauty in something, I'm not just going to go and trample it. That comes from understanding and growth. That's what a second aspect of environment. If you have the frommest, the most closed, protective environment, that's great. But you did half a job. Because, tell you the honest truth, kids get around things. They know things. You have to encourage them. You have to give them the tools to be able to see what's right. Teach them what's right. To understand things. You have to build that row of flowers that they'll understand and appreciate its beauty. I'm not going to trample it. That's what yeshiva does. It teaches them the beauty of Torah, teaches them we don't just do things for no reason. There's a reason behind it. There's understanding. Now, not everything is easily understood. There's a reason why we spend all day learning Torah. It's not so simple. But when you see that beauty, it's something, it's empowering. I understand it. And that's why I don't do it. I found a story from Rav Schwab. Schwab was later became the Rav of the German Kehila, Haladas Yeshurin in Washington Heights. And as a bacher, he once went to the Chafetz Chaim. He once spent the Shabbos with the Chafetz Chaim. That Shabbos with the Chafetz Chaim left him with like stories for his whole life. He always told all of these stories with the Chafetz Chaim. One of these stories, it was Chafetz Chaim asked him about this famous phenomenon of mun, that the Jews in the Midbar had this mun that whatever they thought of, it tasted like. He says, what happens if, you weren't thinking of a great salad or a great steak? What happens if you thought of nothing? What did the mun taste like? Interesting question. Chafetz Chaim told him, it tasted bitter. It tasted like nothing. Because if you don't put thought into your Yiddishkeit, then it's stale. People could just go through Yiddishkeit, going through the motions. They're surviving, but they're not living. If you understand the reasoning behind things, the greater Torah understanding you have of something, the more easy everything will be to do. I was talking to the first grade Rabbi the other day. So I remember when one of my kids was in first grade, it was the most beautiful thing. The Mower said that you can't, told my wife, I remember, that you can't imagine the beauty it is the day after all these kids get their sitter, how they come in and they daven so beautifully. It's a beautiful scene. So I asked one of these first grade rabbis, he just gave out the Siddurim the other day. Isn't that beautiful, this? So he honestly answered me, yeah, it is very beautiful. The first day, the second day. But already come the third day, the fourth day, the next week. We know it, where it happens. It's human nature. You lose the luster. You lose the excitement. But the more you're able to be machazik yourself, to re-inspire yourself, to understand the meaning behind these things, that's what makes it more exciting, more meaningful, even years and years down the line. I'll quickly share with you, juggling time, this. So I had so much for this since the summer. But not really. But people have perceptions. The more you learn, the more you could change perceptions. But it's not easy. There's an Ibn Ezra in last week's Parsha that says, why did Moshe Rabbeinu grow up in Paro's palace? Think about it. It's not the most normal thing for a Jewish boy who's going to become the leader of Klal Yisrael. I thought of the mashal, if Theodore Kushner, I checked it up, he's Ivanka and Jared's son, if he ever becomes a Rosh Hashiva, they would ask the same kasha. Why did Theodore grow up, in Trump's White House? Funny place for the next Gadol Hador. Mir Hashem, he should be. But funny place, not the most opportune place you'd think. So the Ibn Ezra gives two answers. I hit the first one now. I hope to get to the second one later. One of his answers, he said, was if Bnei Yisrael had Moshe Rabbeinu growing up with them, and he become the leader, they wouldn't respect him as much. He's Moshe Rabbeinu. He's the greatest sage we ever had. But if he's one of your peers, it's hard to get out of your mindset. He's a great person. You're always fixated. This is who he is. I wouldn't be able to learn from him the same. People's mindsets, it's hard to switch. It's hard to change. I'll say in here, it has when HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a tremendous nace and enabled Sarah to have a child. So when the Malachim told her about this a year before, Titzchak Sarah Kier Balemo. She says, no, ain't going to happen. She laughed about it. I found a fascinating thing. One of the Rashis say over there that one of the reasons why Avraham Avinu had to change his menu when he was serving the Malachim was because Sarah became a Nida. She had a menstrual cycle, came back. So if that's the pshat, why did Sarah laugh when the Malach told her you're going to have a kid? You don't think you're able to have a kid? Well, look what just happened. After many years, all of a sudden you have a cycle again. Says Mizrahi over there on his parish in Rashi that's human nature. When you think a certain way, it's very hard to change it. You see something that looks like it fits that. Maybe you could have a child now. You dismiss it. Human nature, it's very hard to change our perspectives. And even when a child's learning, and in an environment of learning, there has to be tremendous encouragement to be open-minded, to change your perspectives. You see something a certain way, doesn't mean you have to see that the same way your whole life. You can change things. We get fixated many times on, Moshe Rabbeinu could never be that. Sarah thought she could never have a kid. But things change. More learning, the more understanding, it opens people's minds, and they become different people. Taka. I do see it differently. That's the second aspect, to encourage growth through understanding. A third aspect, also tremendous importance, encouraging respect and a relationship with Rabbanim, with Rabbeim. And, we find in Chazal, the importance of having a guide, having a Rebbe, having a Rav. And to be honest, it's something in the world that's missing today. Reuven Feinstein, so Moshe Feinstein's younger son, spoke. They had in a Asifa, I believe it was for the 25th, or maybe it was by the 30th Yahrzeit of Ramosha. And he decided to spend his entire speech speaking about this problem he saw in the quote-unquote yeshiva world today. Is that it's quite common. People go to one yeshiva, then they go to switch to another yeshiva, and then another yeshiva. They bounce around, He says, when did they ever develop a relationship with Rebbeim? It wasn't always that way. It used to be. Like I went to the Mir Yeshiva. He stayed there for years and years. Okay, developed a relationship. He was there for high school, for Beis Medrash. Nowadays, you're here 1 year, you're there, you have to go to Israel, to this place. This is the new in-place to go. Where along the line are you picking up a Rebbe, a Rav? You're in Shidduchim. You have someone to talk to. You have a decision to make in life. Who's your Rav? Who's your Rebbe? Baruch Hashem, we don't have this problem over here in Florida as much. In New York, you have these what they call minion factories, right? You could literally go through the week. I grew up in Brooklyn, so I could talk about it. You could go through the week without repeating davening at the same time, Shachris, Mincha, Mariv, the entire week. You could have 39 flavors of Chol Yisrael ice cream and 39 different ways to daven and 39 different shuls. That's how people live. Convenience, okay? Today I'll daven Mincha at the 1:45 minyan, tomorrow I'll daven the 7 o'clock minyan. So one day I'll daven Shachris at the 8 o'clock minyan, one day at the 10 o'clock minyan. Okay, where's a person's relationship? You have a Rav, you have a certain structure. This is the shul I daven at. He's my Rav. He's the person I ask questions to. It's an important thing for a person to develop, for children to develop a Rebbe and a Rav. Sometimes even, I'm very lucky. I grew up, I had a tremendous kesher with my Rabbanim that in the shuls my parents davened in. Tremendous kesher ad hayom. And I also had a Baruch Hashem wonderful relation with my Rebbeim in yeshiva. But not necessarily every kid will take to the Rav of your shul necessarily. Okay? But the kid has to have somebody that he's connected with, that he would ask a question with. You should encourage that. As the Beis Medrash Rebbe, I do have, people talk to me about all different things, from Shidduchim and downwards. And we post Shidduchim too. But it's not easy. Especially as the kids get older, the same kid that pushes away, Mommy, I don't need you to come in with me anymore. He's also self-conscious about talking about his life with the Rebbe. And that's something that also needs encouragement. To encourage a child to have a relationship with a Rebbe, with a Rav, somebody you could turn to, somebody that will give you a boost, will give you chizuk, will help you navigate the challenging waters of life. That's a big deal. And the more that we can encourage in our homes respect for Rabbanim and Rebbeim, the more our children will value that. And Baruch Hashem, I see in all the communities, there are Rabbanim, there are Rabbeim, there are B'nai Torah, there are Chashuva people that are within, minutes walk, a moment of contact. There's so many people that people could turn to. Florida is Baruch Hashem a tremendous Malkum Torah today. And there are a lot of wonderful, wonderful Rabbanim out there. And we should encourage our children to have connections with Rabbanim and their Rabbeim. And the final area is encouraging self-confidence. Not enough for our child to have this general environment of, I want the best for my child, my little tzaddik. Not enough for them to encourage them to think and to grow and to learn and to have a kesher with the Rebbe. But there's another aspect of just having self-confidence. Knowing who you are and having that image of yourself last for a lifetime. I'll tell you one story, one chazal. We'll start with Moshe Rabbeinu. The Ibn Ezra, as we mentioned before, who asked why did Moshe Rabbeinu grow up in Paro's palace, his second answer to that question is to give Moshe a sense of self-worth. If you've been with the Jews who were slaves, you'd feel shuffle, you'd feel lowly, I told the guys, like a schnorr. To be the leader of Klal Yisrael, you need to have strength. For Moshe Rabbeinu to grow up in a house like Paro's house, that gave him the extra boost of self-confidence. And that's what kids need. They need self-confidence. Sometimes you can make it from the environment, but you could equally, if not more so, make it from the words you say, the way you talk to your child, the way you tell him who he is. When he looks in the mirror, what does he see? A chazal say by Yehuda, who was one of the leaders of the Shvatim. But it seems after the selling of Yosef, the brothers had some degree of second thoughts, and they're upset at Yehuda. Pasuk says, "Vayered Yehuda me'al achiv." Yehuda was put down from his brothers. And Rashi says that they lowered him. He was no longer considered the leader. What happens next? Yehuda was a little, taken aback from the whole situation. And he goes, hangs out with his friend Ishta, or Dolmi. And the Torah says he meets somebody who was Bas Kanani, the daughter of a Kanani. Simply translated, that sounds like a Kanani woman. Sorry for using the Brooklyn vernacular. A shiksa. Kanani. The same people that Avram Avinu warned Eliezer, don't marry my kids off to. Maybe it was a Kanani. So Rashi over there says Kanani means Tagar. It means a merchant. Don't read it as a Kanani. No, it means a merchant. And one of the Mefarshim over there is saying Rashi, how do you know it meant that? Maybe it meant an actual Kanani girl. It says because it can't be. Because Yehuda viewed himself as Malchus. He was, kingdom is going to come out of Yehuda. Yehuda would never do that. But didn't his brothers just strip that away from him? The answer is, Yehuda viewed himself, this is who I am. Nobody else could take that away from me. I am Malchus, I'm greatness. Kingdoms, Mashiach ben David is going to come out of me. All the kings of the Klal Yisrael will come out of me. That's who I am. And despite all the travels in life, that's what kids need. To have a strong sense of who they are, that no matter what comes their way, this is who I am. This is my image of myself. Tell a story with that. There's this Rabbi Yankel Golinsky, who is a Navardic Baal Musar, wonderful Rav from Yerushalayim. But he went through the war in Siberia and Russia. And he suffered in Siberia, and they put him in the bunk, with other dissidents, other people that was in trouble. And most people, Rahman son, went off. The way the Russians did things, they really broke the person's spirit, and most of these people snapped. And he saw there was one person in his barrack that still had his mind, until he saw one time in the middle of the night, this guy get up, pull out from underneath his bed, it's some bag, and starts putting on this army uniform, stands up straight, and salutes. Bianco was like half asleep, watches this. He's like, oh no, another one bites the dust. The one guy who I thought was still normal, he snapped. So the next day he decided to talk to this guy about it. And the guy confided in him that he was really a Ukrainian general who the Nazis captured. And he was put into Siberia like everybody else. But every so often, he still had his uniform. He would take out his uniform from under the bed, put it on. And that way, by putting on that uniform, he realized who I am. I'm this general, and the Russians can't take that away from me. That's what we have to give our kids. It's not the superficial uniform, but it's the emotional strength that they should realize who they are. They're Ben Torah. I educate them from birth. They could become like Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I encourage an environment of understanding, of growth. They should have a kesher with Rabbeim. And with all that, develop a self-confidence, an image. This is who you are. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. With that summary, I'd like to end with one story. I remember back when I was a Rebbe in Brooklyn, we once had the schus of Yitzchak Shiner, Shlita. He's one of the oldest Rosh Yeshivas in the world. He's the Rosh Yeshiva of the Kamenetz Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. He himself grew up in Pittsburgh and went to public school. It's quite amazing. Big Rosh Yeshiva in Yerushalayim, but he grew up and went to public school. He actually spoke in MetLife Stadium by the last, speaks a good English. He told us he remembers his Rebbe in Yeshiva Torah V'das. It was a Shlomo Hyman. Big Chashuv Rosh Yeshiva. He was actually the person who took over after Rav David Leibowitz left. Mr. Shlomo Hyman had inside his talis bag a letter that he got from his Rebbe, Rav Baruch Ber, that talked about his chashivas, how great he was, and gave him chizuk. And Yitzchak Shiner told us that every time, every so often, Rav Shlomo Hyman would look at this letter. Now think about that. That's some 67-year-old Rosh Yeshiva who has inside his talis bag a letter that he got from his Rebbe giving him chizuk. That lasts forever. We live, in a very digital world today. We converse digitally, and not so many people sit there and write letters anymore. But at least we should verbalize and tell our kids things. But you know what? If we could leave our kids even with a little note, a little letter, different stages of life, what you dream for your kid to aspire to be. Everything has to be balanced. Chazal say it has to be a sulam mutzav artza v'rosha magia shemayim. You have to have this ladder that the head is reaching the heavens, but the bottom is still on the earth. It has to be balanced. You have to know your kids. You have to know their strength. Don't put on your kid something which right now he can't do. But to whatever degree we could encourage our children, write them letters, whether it's on their hearts or in paper. Something for them to remember. This is what my mother feels of me. This is the strength my mother puts into me. Be'ez Hashem, if we do that, we daven for our children, which is obviously the most important thing. But we should all be zocha to raise wonderful, wonderful children and only see Torah Dikanachas. Thank you very much for listening.